Hey everyone, I am Gabriel,
And I'm Izzy.
and we are the co founders of xcsproduct.com.au. We're an online store that sells sex toys and accessories with accessible features for if you have a disability, health condition, or if you just need some extra support.
And along with this, we're also creating a whole blogging space and blogging community that aims to break down the stigma that's surrounding sex and disability. And we also want to educate people on anything to do with sex. So anything from sexual health, sexual activity, sexuality, you name it, it's there.
So, without further ado, we'd like to introduce Jennie from Enhance UK.
So Jennie, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi, so I'm Jen. I am coming all the way from sunny Brighton in the UK. It's actually sunny, despite what everybody thinks. It's in a little bit of sun, but mainly rain. I'm not going to lie. So I mean, it's brilliant to connect with you guys because you're doing something that lots of people kind of have maybe a fleeting thought to do, and then it fleets and then it goes. So just to explain to everybody who we are, so Enhance UK, I'm actually the founder of Enhance UK and the CEO, which sounds probably way more impressive than it actually is. But I set Enhance up 10 years ago, no, 11 years ago now actually. And the reason that I did that is because my background is working in care. I've always worked as a carer. And I was going and working and supporting what we refer to people as service users and looking in people's care plans. And actually, people's care plans is about how a support network can best support that person. And we're going through it, and there was absolutely nothing around people's, as what we refer to it as sexual expression. But even if that was being seen as a bit risque, there was still nothing around, whether somebody's in a relationship, whether they choose to have their partner sleep in the same bed with them. Actually, most people in care homes sleep in a single bed. And I don't know about you guys, but I haven't slept in a single bed since I was a child. Mm-hmm. And I very much saw getting myself into a double bed as quite a grown-up transition. And I think that's still very much the case. And I think if I went back into a single bed, I would just feel, so it's, and that's fine if people choose to sleep in a single bed, but it was very much, it wasn't even thought about. So actually I started to push boundaries a little bit, because I was working for quite a large organisation at the time, saying, why is there nothing in the care plans about this? Why is Jane's husband not sleeping in bed with her because she wants him to? And why, when we're talking about people masturbating, why is that put down in the section of being problematic? Because any time I ever came over the talk about masturbation, it was also always because somebody had been deemed to be inappropriate.
Yeah.
Always. It was never, this is something that needs to be written in. I actually got in contact with an organisation called Spokespeople, who some of you may know of, but they look at one of the things they're a great company, and one of the things they do is males actually sex therapists, and they were looking at promoting accessible sex toys. This was a long time ago now, because this is like 10 years ago. And I tried to arrange for them to come in and have a party that people could look at sex toys, equivalent of an Ann Summers party here, and look at sex toys. And basically it was shut down. It was shut down by the managers. It was shut down by the directors. And I was specifically told that they had been told not to speak to me about this.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that was the beginning of the end, and it was never really touched upon at all. So I basically decided to go out on my own, and which again, it sounds probably much more impressive than it is, but I was so disillusioned by it all, and so aware about how my sexual identity and is important to me, and about how I feel. And it's really important to say for us, sexual expression isn't about necessarily having sex. It's about having your nails done, if that's important to you, or having your hair done, or, you see people, especially in care, sometimes women having a skirt put on and their legs not being shaved. That's fine if that's a choice not to shave your legs and you don't want to shave your legs. But personally, I like to have my legs shaved. I wouldn't want to wear a skirt without my legs shaved. But that question wasn't even necessarily being asked. It was like, oh, it doesn't matter. So sexual expression is very different and it's very individual for everybody, and it needs to be talked about. And I do think that, masturbation is a huge part of that for people, because it's about being able to connect with your body, but something that's so personal and that should be so private and so such a right to be able to do when you are in supported living, whatever sense that might be, whether you're at your home and you've got carers, or you're in a care setting, that becomes public property. People have to discuss it. People have to have a care review about it. You have to have risk assessments. You have to have a whole thing. And even then, when all that has happened, you might not even necessarily get the end result, and because people refuse to do that for you. So it's important to understand the history and the narrative around why then we set Enhance up. So basically, Enhance is run that we run disability awareness training in organisations. Nothing to do with sexual identity and sexual expression at all, just about how to better communicate with disabled people. We run a little bit like a social enterprise, even though we're a charity, and then the money from that we make goes into the campaign called Undressing Disability, and that is supporting people all the way down from sex education and young people, because we know young women are 4 times likely to be sexually abused because they're just not getting the sex education that they need. It's not inclusive. All the way up to people who, to teenagers, and then people who are adults. And that might be people who are adults that have never had sex education and never even had anyone to speak to them about having sex, let alone masturbation. People who may have had a spinal injury or a stroke, or something's happened and they are not sure. Their body, they've got to remap their bodies. And maybe it be remapping an erogenous zone, or or finding actually that, we've got this whole narrative again around sex is penetrative sex. I think maybe the next generation, not so much, because people talk about that a little bit more, and it's much more open to be, pansexual, or it's not it's discussed a lot more. But I'm 41, and certainly in my generation, that's people still get really confused by that, and they're still very much think sex is penis in vagina. Which, as a woman, that is very definitely, for me personally, not always what I want at all. But again, that's not really discussed about, and I think even couples that have been together a long time, they don't necessarily discuss it. And masturbation is still very much seen as something that shouldn't be talked about. So it's about, so if you've got that, and you've got a disability on top of that, and that you've got to talk to somebody who is your carer, where do you go with that? It's really difficult.
How would you recommend going to carers and educating them about that? Because it is quite personal, like you said, and you can't just bring it up with everyone. So how do you do it in this instance? And do you do it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's the only way. And actually, we had quite a groundbreaking meeting last week with a well-known large care agency in this country, who have I was on a Zoom with 11 people, highly professional people who were therapists, OTs, nurses, a lot of them military background. And it was quite amazing, because they were all there, and they were all kind of saying, we're embarrassed by this, we're all going to admit this, we're uncomfortable with this, but they have got 36 care homes in this country, and they are recognising that they haven't even got a policy in place, but coming to us as an organisation saying, we hold our hands up, we don't know what to do here, and we need your support, which is huge. So yes, that goes back to exactly that. It's not just a case of writing training, it's about a case of people understanding what the law says, what that means, and how that supports you, running training for care staff, but also having support and training, if you like, for the disabled people themselves, so they actually understand that they can come and have these conversations. And then also, which is equally as important, is the family members, because a lot of parents think, I don't want my child to be having sex, that I don't want my child to be vulnerable, which, even though this is what I do for a living. I do this. I'm very passionate about it. Even for me, if my daughters came to me and and said, "Mummy, Mum, when they're older, I want to have sex with somebody, and I want you to sit in the room next door and make sure I'm safe." Would I be okay and comfortable with that? No, I wouldn't. Would I do it? I hope that I would. But it's a big ask for parents, to see their children as sexual beings. So conversations around that is really important. So it's not just a case of just training. It's a huge kind of a holistic approach. And it's changing the culture of organisations and saying it's equally as important to have this training around sexual expression that it is health and safety, food and hygiene, manual handling. That's just as important, this training. It probably, if not more important, to be honest. We're looking after human beings, and I don't know about you guys, but half the time, like when you're in a relationship, half the time, your girlfriend's going, "Oh God," so you moan about your partner probably, and then when you're single, you just want to be in a relationship. It's like, and it's quite often the conversations you have with people are about being in a relationship, about not being in a relationship. What's wrong with being in a relationship? It's like very much. And even if you choose to abstain, that's still a choice. That's still I'm sacrificing my sexual identity to be higher and have a greater connection with God, for example. That's seen as a sacrifice. So, and a big deal. But then, whereas a lot of disabled people, that's just a given that you're not even going to get that choice. You're just not going to be sexually active. Which people, I think the only thing that one of the positive things maybe from COVID-19 that has come about is that people have been isolated, people have been in lockdown, and people may now have more empathy. Understandably, it's pretty horrible, isn't it, being locked away and not having a connection. So training and more information being shared is really important.
And how are you going with instigating the training, and how are you going about sharing all of the information at the moment?
Well, we've just set up a new platform, so you can so it's something that is set up for exactly this, because people were coming to us, like yourselves, from all around the world saying, we want to talk about this, we don't know where to go, we don't know who to speak to. So anyone who's interested, on our website, Enhance the UK, www.enhanceuk.org, and then under the campaign, there's something called the Undressing Disability Hub. And we're calling it the sexy little sibling to LinkedIn. But it's basically, it's that you can put your information, if you're an OT, if you're a sex therapist, if you're a care worker, if you're a nurse, if you're a family member, if you're a disabled person yourself, or all of the above, all just in one. And that you can go in and share information. And if you've got products that you think actually this might be really good for a disabled person or somebody who wants to share information, because I think at the moment there are pockets all around the world, people wanting to do this, but it's very fragmented. And people don't know where to go, and they're scrabbling around trying to find information. And things like the law obviously is really important, and it's different in different countries. But if you can take good examples of good practice, and you can and maybe that people have organizations have their own policy written, because I think that's the thing, even lots of organizations don't even have the basis like a policy, which you do need. You do need to support your staff, and again, even simple things, a real liberal organization saying we're going to support somebody to masturbate and get a sex toy for him. Who buys a sex toy if somebody hasn't got dexterity? Who opens the package? Who puts batteries in it? Who cleans it? Who puts somebody in a position to use it? There are things that need to be, as much as we don't want to discuss, those things have to be talked about. The information, a lot of our information is on our website.
How early do you think this conversation needs to start? Because there's obviously the legalities of people needing to be over 18, but people are having sex right from 13 or 14 in a lot of parts of the world. So do you think it's important for schools to also be able to manage this in an appropriate manner?
Do you know what? And again, I'm sure everyone will appreciate the power of a Zoom conversation.
Yeah.
But very professionally, I'm going to walk with you and hopefully people are able to watch this, because I think we're losing our internet. So sorry, what was your question?
My question was, how early do you think these conversations and the education needs to start? Because obviously there's the legalities of needing to be over 18 in most countries, but people are having sex right from a pretty young age. So personally, I believe this conversation needs to start earlier, but how do you kind of, manage that with all the the legalities that go with it?
Well, I think that it needs to be, sex education needs to be inclusive from the beginning. And then what does inclusive mean? And inclusive means even things like seeing your people that are on the information that you're given or you're spoken about, that may look like you, if you're not a non-disabled person. And I think that, again, it comes back to this, when a lot of the time in school, sex education is again about penetrative sex. That's what it's about. And that needs to change as well. And a lot of the time, sex education, certainly in this country, there's no continuity. So it's not always delivered in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And there needs to be more continuity with that, for sure. But also, just within the media, young people particularly, they look to social media, they look to, who's on the TV, who's in films, and there's not that many. There's such this pressure to look perfect, take a selfie, use a filter, take 32 selfies to get the right one. That's not helpful. Luckily now there are some quite powerful disabled people, becoming influencers, and that's great. And I think, that's really positive. But then I'm choosing to look and follow those people. Whereas obviously you have to choose to look and follow those people. And if you put the TV on, there's not that many disabled people really, or you can think about the few disabled people that are actually on TV, and then that's not right.
No.
So there's still a long way to go with that. But sex education is absolutely the key to change, and it shouldn't be inclusive sex education only happens if you've got a disabled young person in your group. It should be naturally like that anyway, because you could really empower a young disabled person by having inclusive sex education, and then they go and speak to a non-disabled person, and that non-disabled person goes, absolutely no way am I interested in you. So you've empowered someone, you've built somebody up to actually for them to be let down quite quickly. So, and that's why the training that we run with Enhance UK in organisations and in schools isn't around sexual expression and sexuality. It's about being inclusive for jobs, because what is part of having sexual expression for me? It's like, again, being proud of my work, being able to earn money to buy the clothes that I want to buy, the shoes that I want to buy to make me feel good about myself. Again, it's a whole one holistic thing. If you haven't got those things, you don't necessarily feel good about yourself. So it's about having that opportunity to be able to do it. And it's something that I don't think that this job is, the ultimate goal as a charity should be that you don't have to exist anymore.
Yeah.
And that's obviously our ultimate goal, that we don't need to exist anymore. But I don't think we're a long way from that.
Yeah. And like when I see my doctor, he always goes, I hope I don't see you again.
Absolutely. But I think that having the conversations, like this, and I think that, with whether it be sex toys or whatever it is, it's people who are inventing things or looking at things. You naturally want these things to be inclusive, not specifically for disabled people. Like texting initially, was really used by the deaf community. Now everyone texts, it's just something that, chicken wire used to be put around chickens because, deaf people couldn't hear the foxes come out and killing the foxes. However, it's just a given now. You've got to be, and no one thinks about the history or the reasoning behind something's being invented. You just think that's really useful. That's just a given. That's how it is. And that needs to be the same with the sex toy industry. And the attitudes towards sexuality.
You know, we're selling toys and that's all great, but I think we're kind of a twofold company where sure we have our products and we're highlighting all the accessible features, which are also important, but we're also an information platform and we want to be posting as many blogs on as many topics as possible, all things sexual health related, and I guess we just want to educate, because a lot of people don't really know what's out there. You know, there's a lot of misinformation. Even when I speak to my own family and friends, you know, they don't know, you know, too much about this area. So it just goes to show that there is a big need for this. And, you know, I think even down the line, we'd love to have our own seminars where, you know, people such as yourself would come down and talk to people and, you know, teach them how they would go and speak to carers, to then go speak to their clients, I guess.
I think really it's just so important, and I think in the whole kind of world of sexual health and inclusivity, that we're creating platforms and creating safe spaces for everyone to learn, for people to go on and find out, okay, I need something that will support me with this condition, or I have limited hand mobility, what is good for me, and to know that it's also completely normal and some toys, and to find out which toys work for you in the sex toy world. So
there's still such a, you know, less of a stigma, but there is still a pretty big stigma about sex toys, especially around men as well. You know, and a lot of people are suffering from things like erectile dysfunction, and, you know, there's things to help there, and we're going to have that. And I really do hope that people don't feel embarrassed that they would need one of those toys, or even not need, they would want one of those toys, because there's absolutely, you know, it's a natural part of being human, you know, to express your sexual identity, and if that's the way you want to express it, then so be it.
Absolutely. And again, I think it's that it's the more that we have these conversations, the more that we can, and the thing is, there's a lack of movement. I mean, I think within this country, and the same as yours, you know, the LGBTQ community have come so far because there's been movements, and there's been, you know, we've got Pride and, you know, people out, and, you know, great. And unfortunately, some countries have gone, you know, backwards in this, but, you know, but really here we've come so far with it, and that's amazing. But with the disabled community, there isn't necessarily that movement, because again, it's very fragmented. And actually even physically people being able to come together is problematic because of access issues. So I think that people haven't got that like one voice, and obviously there's so many thousands of different kind of, you know, impairments and health conditions that you can't really have one voice as such. But what you can be doing is organizations like yourself, companies like yourself, organizations like us, is having these conversations loudly and continuing these narratives to happen, is for disabled people themselves to go, oh yeah, of course that's what I would like to do. You know, of course I want to think about buying a sex toy, or, you know, buying a sexy dress to make me feel good about myself, or whatever, or, you know, whatever that is. And I think that's the, you know, the key thing really for me to summarize this whole conversation. It's whatever that is for you as an individual, you know, and it's an individual journey, but an individual journey doesn't mean you have to do it on your own. And I'm going to remember that. One. That was great. But it's true, isn't it? It's like, you know, if you need a bit of help along the way, which we all do. And mine is, again, like I said, this thing, you know, I like to have my nails done. I don't do my own nails. I'm rubbish at doing it. I go and have those done. But that's not that easy if you have a disability which doesn't enable you to physically go somewhere to get your nails done. So it's about having those conversations. And if, you know, and for carers, particularly if we're going to go back to that, to be thinking outside the box other than hospital appointments, you know, doctor's appointments, OT appointments, and maybe going to do a shop for some food once a week if you're lucky. I don't know about you, but I'd be bored out of my mind if that was my life.
I think so.
And that's not okay. That's not okay. If that's not what you want, that's not okay. You need more than that. And that does link back into sexual expression and identity. Everything kind of comes back to that, really. Like we said, whether it's a choice that you don't want to involve, or you abstain and you're, or you're asexual, how you identify, there's still this way that people feel that they need to identify with something, which shows it's a big part, an integral part of who we are.
Yeah,
without a doubt.
definitely. I mean, I'm an occupational therapist, and I think what really started us talking about this business and this area was, I was saying to Gab how it's really frustrating how a lot of therapists come and they look and they say, okay, you're good, you can access the home, you're safe, you can participate in, I guess, most of your self-care activities.
Cook your food, go to the bathroom.
And a lot of therapists don't talk about sexual health, sexual activity, anything, simple things as well, like putting on lipstick to feel sexy, which can be so important for so many people. And we just really want to break down that stigma and normalize, just talk about it, because it is a really normal and integral part to many people's lives.
And I will say, I don't really want to, kind of shift the blame on carers or OTs or anything, because they're not equipped with the skills yet, I think, to deal with that. But hopefully, I think they're looking for it. I know Izzy is. And hopefully people will get better at it, and there'll be more people teaching the teachers, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. It's really important to say that it's not about a blame. Like I said, I was a carer myself, and I said this in the meeting on Friday. Even if this is what I do now, if I was part of an agency, I was sent to a care home and somebody asked me to put them in a position because they wanted to be sexually active or get a sex toy, would I do that? No. And the reason I wouldn't do that is because that agency hadn't given me the training. Even though I know what the law says, I want that agency to back me up. So it is important. Carers, they work long hours for very little pay. And it's important that it comes from above. It's got to come even higher than that. It's got to be it's got to be the government saying, or we have the equivalent. We've got something called CQC, which is kind of the governing body. I don't know what you have there, but it needs to come from the top saying this has to happen. This has to be, policy, care plans. This has to happen. So you're absolutely right to say that, because yes, carers work, generally speaking, workers work. And nurses and OTs and medical profession work hard, long hours, and they need that backup and support and understand what their rights are as well.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Well, thank you for talking with us.
Just thank you. I'm sure we'll be in touch again very soon. And I hope everyone enjoyed the talk.
Yeah, and
I think you guys are doing. I think it's really exciting what you're doing, and I think that just keep having these conversations, and again, if people want to join up to the hub, and we're going to start pushing it out over the next few weeks. It's live on the website. It's going to start being pushed out more and more. Join and connect with people like yourselves. That would be good. Okay, thanks very much, guys.
Thanks,
Jennie.
Thanks.